Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the Raven Sage? Part 2. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Several loud knocks on her door roused Raven from her research. This better be good. She grumbled. It had been 3 weeks since Slade had marked her, and she wasn't any closer to finding a way to stop Trigon. Naruto had offered to help, and with his shadow clones, she'd been sorely tempted. However, many of her books were too dangerous for anyone but her to read, and most curses would not be fooled by the technique. They were thorough like that. She opened the door and was pleasantly surprised to see Naruto. "Good morning," she greeted with a small smile. "Hey Raven-chan." He greeted with his usual cheer before scratching the back of his head. "Look, I know you're busy the prophecy," he spoke in his own language to avoid being overheard. Even though he knew that the others would accept her, he respected her decision to keep her heritage a secret. Kami knows how nervous he'd been when his friends found out. If anyone questioned him, he could just say that he hadn't noticed that he was speaking elemental. But you need to take a break. You aren't any good all stressed out. Besides, you've earned it. Okay. She said, knowing he was right even if she didn't like it. "I'm assuming you have something in mind." "You know it." He replied in English. "It involves our favorite green-skinned friend." Raven raised an eyebrow. "And that's supposed to help me relax?" "Oh, it will. Trust me." He reassured with a fox-like smirk. After explaining his idea, she was smiling too. "Are you going to tell me what we're doing here or not?" Beast Boy complained as the trio entered the training room. "You know I'm a sage, right?" Naruto, being familiar with the room from all his time spent there, walked towards a fairly open area before sitting down. "Yeah," Beast Boy replied cautiously. He did not like the look on the blonde's face. "Well, most of my more powerful techniques need to be used in sage mode. Technically, he could also use them with Kurama's chakra, but so far he'd only gathered a tenth of his overall reserves, and Naruto was saving up to protect Raven. But I obviously can't use it in battle without putting you at risk. So, I've decided to do something about it." "How?" Beast Boy asked, getting more concerned as the conversation progressed. He tried to scoot towards the door, but found his way blocked by Raven. Her smirk didn't inspire much confidence. "By practicing, of course," was the happy reply. "I'm going to enter sage mode, and when you space out, Raven's going to smack some sense into you." He looked between the two of them and sighed in defeat. "This is going to hurt, isn't it?" "Oh yeah," Raven answered. "I think we made some good progress." Naruto nodded as the trio entered the main room. "We did, didn't we?" Forgoing her usual monotone, allowing some satisfaction to seep into her voice. "Same time tomorrow." Behind them, a battered Beast Boy groaned, "Why?" Robin looked at them in slight concern. "What happened to him?" "Training." Raven replied simply. "He was training?" he asked, surprised that he had done so without being ordered to. Naruto made eye contact with Raven, his eyes pleading. They seemed to have a silent argument before apparently reaching an agreement. "We're still working on fetch, but we did get him to stay," she said casually, walking past her stunned leader into the kitchen. "You enjoyed that?" Naruto claimed, having joined Raven in the kitchen. "I don't know what you're talking about," she denied. "Come on, you know you did. You hide it well, but I can tell you're a prankster at heart. And it's my job as your friend to bring it to the surface." Raven had an amazing sense of humor, though she usually hid it behind sarcasm. Raven had explained to him how her powers were tied to her emotions, and that if she felt too strongly, they could get out of control. While he hadn't seen any evidence of this, he took her word for it. However, one of the most important lessons he'd learned when training in Kurama's chakra was that you had to embrace all aspects of yourself. As such, he'd been trying to get her to open up more. Before he could say more, Raven held out her hand, seemingly waiting for something. He grumbled as he dug into his ninja pouch, producing a scroll. "Worth it," he said as he handed it over. "What she doesn't know is that I just got another ramen scroll. That one's basically empty anew." "The other one as well," Raven ordered. The now sweating Naruto glanced around rapidly before asking, "What other one?" "That's my ramen scroll." "Yes, this is the one you got a week ago. I know you just got a new one. Now hand it over." Knowing he'd lost, he did so. "Don't be such a baby, it's only 2 days." "Yes. 2 days without the food of the gods. How am I going to survive?" The next day the Titans found Robin in his room, packing a bag. "Robin, you're leaving us?" Starfire questioned. "I have to," he answered, not looking around. "Dude, you got your butt kicked. It happens." Beast Boy said in an attempt to get him to stay. "Happens to some of us more than others," Raven quipped. "Anyway, it doesn't mean you have to quit," he continued, shaking off his irritation. Naruto recognized Robin's expression. It wasn't one of defeat, but rather determination. He's not quitting. You're right, I'm not. But my fight with Kataru showed me how much I still have to learn about martial arts. He said, scowling darkly. No problem, I can help you train. I've got a new simulated fight sequence in the gym. Cyborg went through several fighting poses as he spoke. I've already trained with the best, and apparently it wasn't enough. There's only one person who can help me. Wow. Breeding, leaving for power. If he starts ranting about revenge, I'm going to take over and kill him. We are not dealing with another Sasuke. He's not that bad, Naruto defended uncertainly. You were going after the true master of whom the villain spoke. Starfire guessed. I'm not coming back until I find him. What? Oh come on man, how do you even know this true master is even a good guy? How are you going to find him? Do you even know where you're going? Cyborg questioned dramatically, pointing in Robin's face. I'm not sure. Robin admitted. Sounds like a plan. Raven commented sarcastically as she sat on the bed. According to legend, the true master lives in the mountains on the other side of the world and can be found only by the most serious of students. Beast Boy raised his hand before declaring excitedly, oh, I'm in. When do we leave? What should I pack? Will I need shots? This is going to be so cool. I have to go alone. Robin denied, leaving the room. That guy takes himself way too seriously. Cyborg observed. Naruto was walking down the hall when his prankster sense started tingling. Hoping Raven had somehow converted, he followed it to Robin's room. There, Cyborg stood menacingly over Starfire and Beast Boy, both of whom were wearing Robin's uniform. I can't believe you two would just barge into Robin's room when he's gone, dress up in his uniform, and pretend to be Robin. He scolded, holding the pose for a second before pulling a complete 180 and whining, without me. Hahaha. Beast Boy laughed, realizing he'd been had. Dude, suit up. He said, giving him a uniform. Oh yes, come Robining with us. Starfire exclaimed in joy. It is most delightful. Mind if I join? They heard above them, drawing a shrill scream of surprise from Beast Boy. Looking up, the Titans saw Naruto standing on the ceiling. Flipping to the floor, he grabbed a uniform and held it up. A bit small, but it'll fit. I wonder if I can get Raven to try. Starfire smiled as she saw an opportunity. Glorious. You wish to do the role play with friend Raven? She asked innocently. As Cyborg and Naruto froze to stare at her, the oblivious Beast Boy cried, yes. That would be awesome. No, it can't be. She's so innocent. There's no way she can mean that. Naruto thought, wiping away a small trickle of blood from his nose. Still, I wonder Wano. Bad thoughts. You're not a pervert. Stupid Iro Senin, he's still trying to corrupt me. Raven walked in on an unusual sight to say the least. Her teammates were all dressed in Robin's uniform. Cyborg was making engine noises while rocking on Robin's motorcycle, Starfire was playing with a grappling hook, Beast Boy was on the ground for some reason, and Naruto was doing trick shots with bird earrings. Well, this is just disturbing. Disturbing yet magnificent. Join us. I never knew wearing a cape was so much fun. Starfire implored as she pranced around Raven. It is wonderful to be Robin. She continued, getting in her face. Yeah, he has all the best stuff. Cyborg corroborated, waddling over on the R-cycle. Right. Raven replied, unsure. Come on. Haven't you ever wondered what it would be like to be Robin? You know you want to try it. Beast Boy encouraged as all four Titans stood before her. She locked gazes with Naruto. While she couldn't see his eyes through the mask, she just knew they were pleading with her. 4 days. She said, confusing everyone but Naruto. What? No. Do you want me to join or not? She asked with a raised eyebrow. Later, the 5 Robin-dressed Titans were lounging around the table in the main room. Would you like another slice of the cheese, Robin? Starfire asked as she cut a slice with a bird earring. Thanks, Robin. Beast Boy replied, grabbing the slice, then passing the box off to Cyborg using a staff. Got room for another one, Robin? Don't mind if I do, Robin. He replied before stuffing the whole pizza, sans the missing slice, in his mouth. This is actually pretty good, Robin. Raven, now dressed in Robin's uniform, commented as she ate some ramen from a cup, much to the distress of a crying Naruto. Robin, can I have some? Please. He pleaded with his hands clasped together. No. She quipped, prompting a fresh wave of tears. You know Robins, I have to admit. The mask makes me feel cool. Raven said with a blush, not noticing the figure behind her. Upon noticing the horrified expressions of her teammates, she looked over her shoulder and did a double take. She quickly joined the others on their couch, dragging the suddenly dry-faced Naruto behind her. Pizza. Sweet. Robin jumped onto the couch and grabbed a slice. You know, Robin's the mask makes me feel cool, too. He happily ate his pizza as the others fell backwards, crashing to the floor. It has been a good day, he decided. Sure, he'd lost his ramen for 4 days, 5 if you counted yesterday, but he'd gotten Raven to loosen up some. She'd needed it. As he lay in his bed, Naruto pictured her smile. Definitely worth it. Megasonic sound. Ultra-plasmic display. Phase shield amp. And to top it all off, a brand new hot-off-the-shelf impossible to find anywhere Game Station XL. As Cyborg introduced each increasingly oversized device, Beast Boy's eyes grew larger and larger until Cyborg pulled the giant, impossibly bright console from its tiny box. Beast Boy, unable to contain himself any longer, released tears of joy. It's beautiful. I'm glad you're upgrading ops, Cyborg, but is any of this actually going to help us fight crime? Robin asked, shielding himself from the glare with his cape. Sure. He responded hesitantly, still holding the glowing box. Why is it so bright? Better yet, how? It's not even plugged in. Naruto asked. He may still be new to much of the technology in this world, but even back in the elemental nations, they'd had the basics. That knowledge had grown since his arrival, though there was still a fair ways to go. I stopped questioning things like this a long time ago. Raven answered in resignation. Over in the kitchen, Starfire examined a tall white box on the counter. And for what purpose is this crime-fighting device? She poked it, accidentally setting the thing off. Eek. She yelped as a barrel extended from the top. It launched several waffles, some butter, and a fork into the air as it dispensed a plate and orange juice to the side. The waffles landed on the plate before being covered in butter and impaled by the fork. Cyborg posed proudly before Raven held up one of the pastries. Evil beware, we have waffles. She deadpanned. I like this stuff as much as the next guy, but don't you think it's a little big? Robin asked. Come on, guys, this is the future. If we don't keep up, it'll just leave us behind. Besides, don't you want to hear the new equalizer? He asked, enticing 3 of them while Naruto stood to the side with Raven. Before Cyborg could press the button on the wall-sized device, he was struck by lightning before vanishing in a puff of smoke. The other Titans looked at where he'd disappeared, wide-eyed, and Starfire mechanically chewed her waffle. Okay. Before anybody says anything, that was totally not my fault. Finally. Raven said in relief. What did you find? Naruto commented from his position sitting on the bed, sealing away his empty ramen cup. After he had commented on the similarities between Cyborg's disappearance and his summoning jutsu, Robin asked Raven to try to find the spell, if that's what it was, that had taken their friend. Having no better way to help, Naruto had decided to keep Raven company while she researched in her room, unaware of the other's shock. They'd been there for most of the day. Since they had both been hungry and it had already been 3 days, she'd allowed him to make them some ramen. Provided, of course, that he not spill a single drop. When teasing him with it the other day, Raven had found she quite liked the noodles. Of course, it wasn't the food of the gods as her friend and secret crush so eloquently put it, but it was pretty good. You were right, it was a summoning. But it didn't take him to a different dimension, she showed him the illustration on the book. It sent him back in time. Are you sure this will work? Robin asked. The 5 of them were currently standing back in the ops room. Using a mixture of science and magic, they'd managed to lock onto Cyborg's sonic cannon. Apparently, he'd been summoned from 5,000 years ago. It should. She replied simply, before her eyes lit up with power. Azarath Metrian Zinthos. She shouted as her magic coalesced in the form of a large raven around her as a swirling vortex formed. Her soul self extended its claw through the portal before it retracted, pulling a figure through the ports. I think it worked. Raven clarified uncertainly as they crowded around the person. Cyborg? Robin questioned. Cyborg, clad in some sort of stone armor, rushed the closing vortex. Sarasum. He cried, just missing it before it vanished. No. Send me back. Cyborg, it is us. Your friends. You're home. Starfire told him. The village. It's under attack. He grabbed Raven by her shoulders. They need me. He cried desperately. It was kind of a one-way deal. An uncomfortable Raven awkwardly informed him. Beast Boy was about to speak before Naruto quickly clapped his hand over his mouth. He didn't know what the changeling was about to say, but he was sure that it wouldn't help. Judging from his appearance and what he'd said, it was clear that they'd pulled him from the middle of a battle of some sort and that he'd been with someone he cared about. I made a promise. They were counting on me. A depressed Cyborg said, causing Naruto to flinch. Cyborg, I'm sorry. We had no idea. Robin apologized. I didn't even get to say goodbye. He said, walking away. In his room, and now armorless Cyborg flexed his hand. Welcome to the future. He said in resignation. As he placed his sword on a stand in front of his armor, Naruto opened the door. It's hard, isn't it? Not knowing. He said, walking towards the large man. You constantly wonder what happened, hoping that those you left are okay. Yeah. came the dull reply. A tear fell from his eye. We were being overrun. Without me, I don't know if they could survive. Sarasum. Naruto placed a hand on his shoulder, cutting him off. You can't do this. You can't wonder what could have been. You have to have faith that your friends pulled through. He paused before continuing. When I told you that I was sent while fighting a traitor, that was only part of the story. Cyborg looked at him then, giving him his attention. Naruto had told them some about his past, but he usually avoided the exact circumstances of his arrival. Before that, we were fighting a war against a madman. A lot of stuff happened, and I lost a good friend. We eventually won, but everyone except me and my team were trapped in an eternal dream world. We needed Sasuke's help to free them, but he betrayed us instead. I didn't get any sleep my first night here. I kept wondering what happened and if everyone was okay. It was eating me up inside. Cyborg was struck by the similarities in their situations. What did you do? You seem fine now. He asked. I was lucky. The next day I was able to contact home. Apparently Sasuke had turned a new leaf after I left and freed everyone. But before that, my friend helped me. Friend? Kurama. Cyborg vaguely remembered something about a fox beard. He's been sealed inside me since birth. He kept me grounded and reminded me that I wasn't alone. Naruto locked gazes with him. You're not alone either, Cyborg. A moment passed before he nodded. Thanks. No problem. As he said this, the door opened again, revealing Raven. She nodded at Naruto, who sighed in relief before she turned to Cyborg. I have something to show you. She said. She placed a book on the table and turned to a specific page. Sarasum, he breathed in surprise. She did it. They won. He exclaimed as he studied the picture of a female warrior standing victoriously over a large green humanoid. Raven turned to a different page. Apparently, they had help. That's you, isn't it? She questioned, pointing to a man. He nodded. Interesting, you're the only one without armor. Yeah, didn't need it. He sat down to look through the book as the others left to give him privacy. She didn't want to be here. She really didn't, but she had to do this. She owed it to him. So, she knocked on the door. It took a moment before Naruto opened it, rubbing his eyes. Hey Raven-chan, what's up? He asked, yawning. Can I come in? She asked. I need to talk to you. It's important. He got a good look at her before frowning. Of course. He moved to the side, all tiredness gone. Whatever had Raven here at 1 in the morning had clearly upset her. Most wouldn't notice, but he'd spent enough time around her that he'd recognize the slight tensing in her shoulders as well as the imperceptible strain on her face. He sat on the bed and motioned for her to join him, which she did. When I was looking for the spell that took Cyborg, I found something. It's complicated and it would be a one-way ticket, but she took a deep breath before looking at him in the eyes. I can send you home. He could go home. He could see his friends. He could become Hokage. He grinned. This was great. He could leave. His smile slowly fell. He'd never be able to come back. He could never sleep in the tower or hang out with the Titans. I could never see Raven again. It was this last thought that really bothered him. He liked the other Titans, he really did. They were his friends. But his dream, his village and his other friends were back in the elemental nations. But could he really leave Raven? It wasn't just that he felt he had to help her with Trigun, though that was a small part of it. It was her. It was everything about her. Her smile, which she'd begun to show more. Her laugh, which sounded so beautiful. Their teasing, meditating together, spending time together, everything. He couldn't leave her. She inspired feelings in him that he'd never felt before. It was like all the pain he'd been through, all his suffering, just faded into a distant memory, only to be replaced by a feeling of bliss. His feelings for Sakura hadn't even come close to what he felt for the girl sitting next to him. At this thought, he made his decision. As he came out of his reverie, Naruto realized Raven had been talking. Take a few days to prepare the spell, and you'll need to send a beacon with the toads, but… Raven. He interrupted her. I'm not going. What? She asked, surprised. I'm staying here. With you. He added in his head. Raven turned away. If this is about Trigun, then… This is not about him. Naruto denied. Her head whipped around and she snapped at him. Then why? All the stress she'd been bottling up, what with Cyborg and Trigun and now this, came bursting out. You have friends there. You have a surrogate mother. You can be Hokage. You're a hero there, it'll be easy to make the family you've always wanted. So why? Why are you staying here? A lifetime spent under the prophecy had made her believe that she was destined to be alone. Her friends had been slowly helping her through that, but after Melchior, she'd convinced herself that she'd never be wanted romantically. It's why she'd never acted on her feelings for the whiskered blonde, and it was why she was totally blindsided by what Naruto said next. Because you're here. What? I don't know how to explain it. he explained, frustrated. When I'm with you I'm happy. I feel more at peace than I ever have before. And the thought of leaving you, it physically hurts. I just can't. He gazed into her eyes, talking with such emotion that it was a wonder he couldn't hear her heartbeat. Anyone who knew him would be shocked. The blonde idiot who always spoke his mind, that could turn enemies into friends with a speech, was struggling to say a few words. Luckily for him, Raven had decided that she didn't need words as she pulled Naruto into a kiss. Naruto melted into the kiss. It was clumsy and unpracticed, but to them, it didn't matter. Raven, her arms around Naruto's neck, was surprised when she felt him wrap his arm around her waist to pull her closer. Now practically in his lap, Raven reveled in his muscled physique. He wasn't bulky or overwhelming, but he was firm, without an ounce of fat on his body. She felt secure, safe, for the first time in forever, wrapped in his embrace. She poured all her emotion into the kiss, all the love, fear, and hope that she'd felt but bottled up for the past month. For once, she allowed herself to feel full force, without worrying about the consequences. Surprisingly, nothing blew up. She didn't question it though, instead she deepened the kiss. After a minute of heated kissing, they reluctantly separated to breath. In his eyes, she could see her own emotions reflected back at her. I love you. She had never thought she would say those words to anyone. Yet, as she spoke them now, she found that she'd never uttered a more true statement. Naruto teared up a little. Having grown up alone and hated, he could count his remaining hand the number of times he'd heard those words on. As far as he knew, aside from Sakura's false confession, none of them had been meant in a romantic sense. Yet, here was this beautiful woman, who by now knew him better than anyone still alive, confessing her love to him. I love you too. He replied as a tear of joy slid down his face. Naruto sat, writing in a scroll. After Raven had eventually gone back to her room, he'd felt a new resolve fill him. Trigun would not get her. He refused to allow it. The problem was that even with his around-the-clock research, he still hadn't found a way to stop him. He'd been about to wake Kurama up from the seal, when the obvious occurred to him. Stupid. Trigun was a demon of immense power, just like his friend. He didn't need to find a way to defeat him, he already had one. He awkwardly rolled up the scroll with his left hand. He didn't sleep with his henge, and after Raven had arrived, he hadn't wanted to put it on. Well, the temporary hand was great for doing things he couldn't feel with it. And with Raven, that was exactly what he'd wanted to do. While it was still a bit difficult to write with his left hand, he'd managed. Sure, he could have just henged a new one after Raven left, but he wanted experience writing with his own limb. If he was going to do this, it was better if he wasn't reliant on such a fragile construct. He bit his thumb and executed a few rapid one-handed seals before he slammed his palm on the ground. I need you to get this to Tsunade. It's important. Even though Kakashi had recently become Hokage, something he'd had mixed feeling over, he didn't trust the man for a quick response. Tsunade, at least, wouldn't take several days. At this time of night? Are you trying to get me killed? Apparently, this part of Earth conveniently shared the same day-night cycle. Just tell her that I'll get her some of Gamabunta's special sake. The toad whistled appreciatively. How you gonna manage that? Gamabunta had a stash of the most potent sake Naruto had ever seen, and between Jiraiya and Tsunade, he'd seen a lot. The chief toad made it himself as a sort of hobby, well, that and drinking it. Unfortunately, he was extremely protective of the stuff. He had no problem sharing a drink, but he rarely let anyone take a bottle with them. Not even his sons knew where he kept it all. I'm sure I'll think of something. If you're sure, the toad said before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Satisfied, Naruto went back to bed. Raven walked onto the roof with a smile. They'd held each other for a little over an hour last night. She hadn't wanted to leave, but she was worried that the others would get the wrong idea. When she saw him, her smile grew. Good morning, Naruto. He looked up at her with his toad-like eyes. Morning, Ravenheim. What does that mean? She asked, sitting down. Usually, she'd meditate across from him, but this time she sat right next to him, almost touching shoulders. Oh, Naruto responded as he remembered that suffixes apparently didn't translate for her. It means princess. Raven blushed. But I'm not a princess. To me you are. Naruto said sincerely. Raven took a quickly glanced around to make sure that they were alone before she leaned over and kissed his cheek. Thank you. She sounded almost shy, as she was still unfamiliar with displaying her emotions. For what? Naruto asked, his head tilted in confusion. Raven smiled. For being you. Naruto sat peacefully, immersed in the calming energy of nature. As had become normal, thoughts of Raven dominated his mind. Last night had been amazing. Raven loved him. She loved him. It was exhilarating to love someone and have them return the feeling. He had to focus though. She was in danger. He'd already taken the first steps by sending his request to Tsunade. But what if she couldn't find them? What if he couldn't do it? What if he failed her? What if he forced himself to take a calming breath? Something wasn't right. It felt like when Kurama was still fighting him, like another's emotions were influencing his own. But it wasn't anger this time, it was fear. The source was outside himself, but it seemed familiar. It kind of reminded him of Raven. He exclaimed as his eyes shot open. He quickly turned to face her and saw that she was shaking. Sweat shone on her meditating body as her mind struggled with something. Worst of all, Slade's mark glowed brightly around her gemstone. Hit. He grabbed her shoulder, intent to snap her out of it before his vision shifted. Raven looked down upon the mark of Scath while surrounded by the ruins of the city. "Tick-tock Raven, time is running out." Slade's voice echoed. "I'm not afraid of you," she defiantly claimed. "Silly girl," Slade said as he appeared behind her. "I'm not the one to be afraid of." She faced him to find him stalking towards her. Slade forced her to back up towards the edge of the roof. "You know that," he added, disappearing in a flash of lightning. She looked around in concealed panic as fire rained from the sky. "What you have concealed you shall become," Trigon's booming voice demanded. Two large fireballs hurtled towards her, however, she was able to erect a barrier just before impact. "It's a lie." Raven defied as the fire burned around her. "I won't let this happen. I'll find a way." A menacing shadow walked through the fire towards her. "Your optimism is really adorable." Before Slade could continue his speech, a cheerful voice sounded from behind Raven. "I know. It's one of her best qualities." "Naruto!" Raven exclaimed in shock. "So, your name is Naruto. I must say, I'm quite impressed that you're here. It takes a lot of skill to subvert the will of Trigon." Naruto scratched the back of his head. "It was kind of an accident, you know. If Slade had been a lesser man, he would have face-faulted. Even still, he was sorely tempted." "Insolent mortal. How dare you interfere?" Naruto turned to the still stunned Raven. "Was that Trigon?" he asked, to which he received a nod in return. "Oi, Trigon," he shouted to the sky. "I have a bone to pick with you." "And just what might that be?" he asked, slightly amused by the tiny human. "How dare you treat Raven like this, you bastard? You have no right. I am her father. She exists only because I allowed. Her sole purpose is to serve me." "That's a load of crap and you know it. A father is supposed to love their kids, to care for them. Yet here you are, trying to make her kill herself for you. Until you start acting the part, you have no right to call yourself her father. What you say matters not, mortal. Her destiny shall be fulfilled. The portal must be opened." Two pairs of eyes shot open before Raven launched herself into Naruto. He pulled her close with his hinged arm while stroking her hair comfortingly with his real one. "Kit. Where were you?" "I was just having a chat with Trigon," he replied. "Of course you did." Honestly, why was he even surprised at this point? "And how did that go?" he asked in resignation. Naruto looked at the crying Raven in his arms. "He's a bastard," he mentally growled. "If I ever see him, I'm gonna have to beat some sense into him." "Of course you are." Back in the real world only a few seconds had passed. "It's okay, Ravenheim. He's gone," Naruto said softly. "Naruto, I'm afraid." Raven was one of the strongest people he knew, and to see her like this Naruto felt his heart break. "I know, but he won't get you." He lifted her chin so she would look at him. "We'll stop him. Together." After Raven had calmed down, the two of them had headed to her room to do some research. "How much time do we have?" Naruto asked as they looked at a book. "Not long. The mark's a warning. It means he's coming." Naruto could tell that she was working hard to keep her composure. He could practically feel her turmoil. "Okay, so we just need to be ready for when he does," he said optimistically before turning somber. "Raven," he said gently. "I think we should tell the others." "What?" "No. They can't get involved." "They already are." Naruto spoke softly as ever. "They are your friends and they will always protect you." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "They won't leave you. It's okay to be scared, but have faith in them. We'll need their help to get through this." "I don't know," she answered, conflicted. "That's alright. I won't make you do anything. I'll support you no matter what you decide." He smiled comfortingly. "I'll always be there for you. That's a promise of a lifetime." Encouraged by his support, Raven made her decision. "You're right." She pulled so she could see his face. "There's something I need to try first. After that, I'll tell them." She walked around her room, gathering supplies. "We're going to Azarath." They sat facing each other inside a circle of powder and candles. "You don't have to come with me." "Do you want me to come?" "Well, yes, but..." "Then I'm coming. I promised, didn't I?" He grinned. She had to smile in response. It felt nice to be loved. "Place your hand on the cover and get ready." Upon his doing so, she began to chant. Azarath Metrian Zinthos Karazin Rakashas Endi Ravasarix Endrian Azarath Azarath Azarath. As she chanted, a field of energy formed from the powder circle, stretching to the roof, where it formed a portal. Upon her final words, the duo was sucked into the portal. Naruto looked around in awe at the tunnel of light flying past them. That awe was ruined, however, as several apparitions screeched past them. "Tell me those weren't ghosts," Naruto pleaded. "Those weren't ghosts." Raven obliged, making no effort to hide the fact that she was lying. Suddenly, they felt a heat from the rear and looked back to see a wall of fire headed towards them. "Oh, that's not good," Naruto said. "You think?" Raven asked sarcastically. She grabbed his hand and flew faster, trying to outpace the flames. Unfortunately, she wasn't fast enough as they began to envelop them. "Hold on," she called, summoning her soul self to protect them. Naruto watched from within as the flames failed to penetrate the black energy. Kind of reminds me of our transformation Kurama," he thought idly as the ethereal bird lashed out. In several swift strikes, it dispelled the fire before vanishing. They flew further until their path was blocked by a large purple runic barrier. Undeterred, Raven charged forward, still dragging Naruto. As she strained against the barrier, her gem glowed brightly. "Let us in," she shouted as she breached the wards. In a flash of light, they were ejected from the spell, landing at the edge of a cliff. "Ow," Naruto said as he looked up from the ground. "Wow." Unable to say anything else, he just gazed at the sprawling metropolis in front of him. "Welcome, Naruto, to Azarath. My home." "Hello," Raven called as she walked down the empty streets. Raven. Is it usually so quiet?" Naruto asked. So far, they had yet to see a single soul. Honestly, it was a little creepy. "No. It's not like I was expecting a parade," but she trailed off as she caught sight of a dove flying overhead. "Follow me," she said as they went after the bird. It led them through the streets until it flew to the top of a large structure with a glowing depiction of a dove. There, it landed on a figure clad in a white robe. "Arella." Raven called as she flew, carrying Naruto by the hand, to meet her. The woman attempted to enter the building before she arrived, but to no avail. "Wait. I've come back." She stopped upon hearing Raven's words. "Mother, please. Help me." "That's her mother? Then why was she avoiding us?" "I don't know kid. Something doesn't seem right. You always had a home here, my child." Arella finally turned to look at her daughter. "But help we could not give. The prophecy it's happening. You have to tell me how to stop it," she pleaded, holding the book out to her mother. "Nothing could be done. The promise of your birth was absolute." Unable to stand by, Naruto spoke. "You're wrong. As long as you don't give up, there's always something that you can do." "Young sage," she said, addressing the surprised Naruto. "Surely as a child of prophecy you know that fate is absolute." This elicited a laugh from him. "That's exactly why I know that you're wrong. Everything I accomplished, all my victories, were not because of some prophecy. Destiny did not help me. I had to give my own sweat, blood, and tears every step of the way. I did it all because I never gave up. Sure, I fulfilled the toad's prophecy, but I've defied fate more times than I can count." They both stared at him in surprise, and in Raven's case, hope. "As a failure, I should never have defeated Niji, but I did. As dead last, I shouldn't have been able to survive as a ninja, much less defeat a goddess. I have defied Priestess Shan's vision of my death. I befriended Kurama, the QB no Kitsune, and the other Biju after centuries of hatred. And most of all, as a Jinchuriki, I was destined to live my life alone. But back home, I had the entire elemental nations fight on my side. I had a whole village full of friends. And here," he looked at Raven with immeasurable adoration. "Here, I've found something that should have been impossible. I found love." He turned back to Arella with determination burning in his eyes. "And I'll be damned if I let fate take that away from me. So don't tell me that nothing can be done." As Raven listened in wonder, Arella remained resigned. "Your words are inspiring, but futile. It is too late for Earth, just as it was too late for Azarath." She vanished, as did the city. In its place was a fiery wasteland. "No." Raven breathed in horror as Trigon's sinister laugh echoed around them. As they stared at the four glowing eyes hovering above them, they were enveloped in a flash of light. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Naruto comforted Raven as she cried into his chest, both of them on their knees. Her home, her people, her mother. They were all gone. "I can't," Raven got out through her sobs. "I can't stop him." She locked her tearful gaze on him. "I'm not like you. I'm not strong enough to defy fate." "What are you talking about? You do it every day." "What?" she asked, confused. "You were born for a purpose, to destroy the world. You were supposed to be a force for evil, right?" She nodded, looking depressed. "And yet, here you are. Here, in this tower full of heroes. Here, where you spend your time risking your life to help people. You were supposed to be evil, but you are one of the best people I have ever met." He smiled. Not his usual wide grin, but a smaller smile that somehow conveyed even more. If that isn't defying fate, then I don't know what is. You are strong enough, and you aren't alone. We will stop him. For the first time, Raven believed. She believed that they had a chance. Thank you. She dried her tears and stood up. Let's. Before she could finish, there was a knock at the door. Any luck finding the symbol? Robin's slightly muffled voice asked. Raven took a deep breath. Yes. She said resolutely as Naruto looked on with pride. As Naruto, Robin, and Raven entered Ops, Starfire exclaimed, friends. It is most fortunate that you have arrived. Cyborg was correct. The symbol is not of the earth. What I have discovered is most disturbing. The whole team gathered around a printout of the mark on the table. She pulled a pointer rod from somewhere and gestured at a spot on the page. Please, give your attention to this quadrant. In the folklore of the Zargak nomads, markings such as these were used as a prelude to the Goulding. As she spoke, Naruto grew more and more confused. Actually, Beast Boy tried to interrupt Starfire, only to be ignored. A savage ritual that she stopped as Raven peeled off the part she'd indicated. She examined it before turning to a sheepish Beast Boy. Tofu? She asked with a raised eyebrow. It's tofu calzone. My bad. Raven tossed it to him, hitting him in the face. Oh, never mind then. Starfire said dejectedly. It doesn't matter. Raven, you said you knew what it was? Robin asked. Yes. She looked over at Naruto, who gave her a nod of encouragement. This interaction did not go unnoticed by Robin. It's the mark of Scath. He was worshipped by an ancient order who she was interrupted as the alarm sounded. They turned to look at the large screen to see Slade's trademark S prominently on display. Slade. Robin growled. In an abandoned part of the city, Slade blew up several buildings with blasts of fire. I do love my job. He said as he charged another blast in his hand. Before he could fire, a beam of sonic power destroyed it. Vandalism? I'd say you hit an all-new low, Slade. Robin commented. Looking up, Slade saw the boy wonder and his team, as well as the blonde nuisance. The Teen Titans. And I see you brought Raven's little guard dog. Naruto gave a short laugh. She doesn't need me to protect her, trust me. Regardless, as you can see, I'm right in the middle of something. He gestured to the surrounding rubble. I'll deal with you in a few minutes. No. We'll deal with you now. Robin declared. You can't always get what you want, Robin. Slade brought his reignited hands together and slammed them into the ground, creating a flaming shock wave that the team managed to avoid. Titans. Split up and take him down. Robin commanded as Slade leapt from building to building, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Despite his confidence in her, Naruto joined Raven in her pursuit, with her flying as he ran along the sides of buildings. Doesn't Slade know that this whole block is slated for demolition? He heard Cyborg comment over the comms. Since when does Slade need an excuse to wreck stuff? Beast Boy commented. Robin suddenly intercepted Slade mid-jump, kicking him into a stack of barrels. Why did you come back? Did you get these powers from Scath? What does he want? Robin demanded. Oh, so the girl told you about him. I wonder if she told you who he really is? Slade questioned as he slowly walked towards Robin. Seeing his expression, he hissed in disappointment. No. Pity. Well, she was going to, but you kind of interrupted our meeting. Naruto said casually as he landed next to Robin. How nice of you to join us. I'm actually glad you're here, Naruto. You make things so much more interesting. As Robin pondered how Slade knew his friend's name, Naruto spread his arms. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to keep you waiting then. Before Slade could ask what he meant, he heard a cry of Rasengan. And felt a horrible grinding sensation in his back. The attack exploded, propelling him past Robin into a wall. How's that for interesting? Naruto yelled as his clone popped. You're quite full of surprises, aren't you? Slade commented as he stood up. He spread his arms and created a large fireball. Well, so am I. He launched a flaming orb, only for it to be stopped by a wall of black energy. What do you want? Raven asked as her barrier faded. Only what any messenger wants, Raven. For their message to be heard. He said ominously. It's time your friends learned the truth. And if you don't tell them, I will. As Naruto already said, I was already planning to. This time, Raven was the one advancing towards him. She knew he wouldn't hurt her. After all, she was Trigon's precious gem. Raven could finally get him back for all the torment he'd put her through. And since she couldn't kill him, there was no reason for her to hold back. Still, while you're here, you can deliver a message for me. The other Titans arrived to see her envelope Slade with her powers. She thrust her hands forward and slammed him into a building, before twisting and hurling him into another. Finally, she lifted him high and brought him crashing to the ground, creating a small crater. Her bout of violence had dislodged her hood and parted her cloak, revealing the glowing runes as she levitated towards her battered foe. You tell him that he'll have to destroy me before I help him. Slade pulled himself up to a knee. You can tell him yourself. The hour is near. Neither you nor your crippled pet can stop it. Raven saw red at the jibe and pulled the nearby wall down on top of him. She then freed him, only to bash him against every available surface. She held him mid-air and closed her extended hand, causing all the rubble to crash into him. Finally, Raven's soul self manifested around her and she yelled as she sent it racing towards him. Slade's eye barely had time to widen in surprise before it collided with him. The resulting explosion covered the area in dust, obscuring the spectator's vision for a few moments. Is it wrong for me to think that was hot? Naruto asked Kurama. No kid. No, it is not. Just checking. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Raven declared as the dust settled to reveal Slade, his head bent at an unnatural angle. Slade snapped his bones back into place. You might not fear me, but look who's afraid of you. He said as he phased into the ground. She turned to see her friend's shocked expressions. She turned away, not wanting to face their fear, when she heard Naruto's voice. Awesome. The ancient order that worshipped him used the name Scath to protect the true identity of their master. We know him as Trigon. Raven explained back in ops. Cyborg recoiled in shock. Are you serious? That's who we're up against. Oh, man. His cruelty is legendary, even on my world. Starfire added. So, what makes you go all glowy in the dark? Beast Boy asked. Raven felt Naruto place a comforting hand on her shoulder. Much to the surprise of the others, she gave him a small smile in thanks before answering. It's a warning. It means Trigon is coming and the way he gets here is through me. She took a deep breath. There's a prophecy. The gem was born of evil's fire. The gem shall be his portal. He comes to claim. He comes to sire. The end of all things mortal. The others shuddered. I'm not just a person. I'm the gem, his portal. But Raven, why you? Robin asked. Because, Trigon is my father. She said as she stood up. But I have no intention of letting him through. Naruto coughed, catching her attention. She smiled again. Sorry, we will stop him. I just have one question. Cyborg said as we went over to them. How can we help? No. Raven cried as she jolted awake. It took her a few minutes to realize she was sitting up in her bed before she fell back on her pillow groaning. Even with everyone's support, her remaining doubts and insecurities plagued her mind. She glanced at her clock before groaning again. After hours of lying awake, made worse by her inability to meditate, she'd only managed a paltry half-hour of sleep. It had been much the same after Slade first returned on her 16th birthday, but at least she'd still been able to meditate. Raven was about to resign herself to a sleepless night when an idea struck her. Currently, Naruto was pacing his room. He'd known about Trigon for over 2 weeks now, but today had driven home just how much danger Raven was in. Sure, as a ninja, his friends were constantly in danger, but this was Raven. He'd never cared about anyone this strongly. Despite only fully realizing his feelings the night before, he couldn't imagine life without her. After dreaming of her death for the 3rd time, he'd stopped trying to sleep. While he wanted nothing more than to go check on Raven, he refused to interrupt her rest. He suddenly stopped pacing as, for the 2nd time in as many nights, he heard someone knocking. An illogical surge of relief filled him when saw who it was. Raven watched as several intense emotions flashed across Naruto's face before he pulled her into a tight hug. She only hesitated a moment out of surprise, then returned at full force. Apparently, she wasn't the only one in need of comfort tonight. He pulled back after a minute. Sorry. He apologized. Don't be. She studied him. Nightmares. He nodded. Raven knew he had them on occasion, but this seemed more than that. Do you want to talk about it? He moved aside to allow into his room. As the door closed, he sat heavily on his bed. While he didn't want to worry Raven, he knew he couldn't lie to her. When he felt her settle next to him, he spoke. I couldn't save you. I tried everything, but you still died. Tears welled in his eyes as he locked gazes with her. I can't lose you. This time, Raven initiated the hug, wrapping her arms around him. You won't. She said with a new conviction. She realized he was just as scared as she was, and, in some odd way, that comforted her. He was just as scared as she was, if for different reasons. He wasn't fearless, but he was still willing to take on Trigon, an all-powerful demon, for her. She came here for comfort, only to be the one comforting him. And she was alright with that. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to stop him together, remember? Thanks, Ravenheim. That really helps. He wiped away his tears before realizing that she was the one that sought him out. I'm sorry. You came here and I just dumped all this on you. She frowned. Naruto, you've helped me so much. Never think that you shouldn't talk to me about stuff like this. Trust me, you can't bottle all this up. But. No. She needed him to understand this. I'm here for you just as much as you're here for me." He smiled, still wrapped in her embrace. "Alright." They just sat there for a bit, enjoying the other's presence, before he asked, "Why did you come here?" "I couldn't sleep either," Raven admitted. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No, just being here helps." It was true. Whenever she was with him, she felt safe, secure. She felt loved. And she really didn't want it to end. Can I sleep here?" she asked. "I don't want to leave." "Of course." Naruto replied, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Deep inside a volcanic cavern, Slade bowed towards the demonic eyes of Trigon. "I have failed. The portal refuses to accept her fate. She draws strength from the boy. He has become an annoyance. His presence protects her mind as she slumbers, though I know not how. He must be eliminated." "What of his claims to the mother's remnant?" he questioned. "If true, then he's much more than an annoyance. I suspect he spoke of a false deity. No mere sage can defeat a goddess. Even if true, he still poses no threat to me. Go dispose of him. Do not fail me a second time." Raven frowned in irritation as light from the window landed on her face. She'd just had the best sleep since, well, forever, and she didn't want to wake up. She pulled her warm pillow closer and smiled as it tightened its hold on her. Wait, she opened her eyes in confusion to see a shock of blonde hair. She almost recoiled until she saw who it belonged to. As memories of the previous night filtered into her sleep-addled mind, she sighed in contentment. Snuggling deeper into Naruto's chest, her smile grew as she drifted back to sleep. Naruto stirred, oddly reluctant to wake. Usually he was up at the crack of dawn, eager to meet Raven for their morning meditation. His eyes snapped open, and he immediately noticed that the sun was already up. Shit. He thought as he sat up. Or, he would have, but someone was holding him down. 5 more minutes. Hearing the groan, he looked down and smiled fondly at Raven's sleeping form. Even while sleeping, she was still the most gorgeous woman he had ever seen. He lay there, content to watch her as she slept. Eventually though, Raven stirred. "Good morning, Haim," Naruto greeted as she awoke. "Morning," she replied groggily. "How'd you sleep?" "Good. Better than I have in a long time." Her content expression seemed to amplify her natural beauty, making it hard for him to breathe. "How about you? Any nightmares?" "None at all." Kami, he wished they could do this every night. "Can I come back tonight?" she asked, echoing his desires. "Always." He planted a gentle kiss on her forehead, causing her flush in a strange mixture of pleasure and embarrassment. As they exited Naruto's bedroom, hand in hand, he thought he saw a flash of movement down the hall. He looked closer, before deciding that it was nothing. Since all the Titans slept in their uniform in case of emergencies, aside from their shoes, there was no need for Raven to go back to her room. Instead, they just headed straight for the main room hand. As they neared Ops, they locked gazes for a moment before moving respectable distance from each other. They weren't trying to hide their relationship per se, but they kind of wanted to be able to enjoy it without the others hounding them about it. For some reason, Naruto felt that it would be a bad idea to tell Starfire. "Look who finally decided to show up." Cyborg boomed from the kitchen. He stood behind the counter in a chef's hat and apron. "What'll you have?" "We have eggs, bacon, waffles, bacon, sausage and more bacon." As he spoke, multiple hands seemed to materialize out of midair to point at each dish. By this point, Naruto was somewhat used to the Titan's strange variations of the Sunset game jutsu. It could actually be fairly entertaining sometimes. "Hit me up with some bacon," Naruto requested, getting a heaping plate from the large man. "I'm good," Raven said, a teapot appearing in a burst of black energy on one of the empty stoves. Robin and Beast Boy watched in fascination as Naruto ate plate after plate of food. "Where does he put it all?" Robin whispered. "I don't know. He eats almost as much as Sai," Beast Boy whispered back. "Friend Raven. I have acquired the medication for you," Starfire exclaimed as she flew up to Raven. In her hand, she held out 2 small pills. "Why are you giving me painkillers?" Raven asked with a quirked eyebrow. "You are experiencing soreness, yes? I have read that it's quite common after your first time engaging in sexual intercourse." Raven's whole body flushed a beet red as several jaws hit the ground. For several seconds, the only sound in the room came from Naruto savagely beating his chest in an attempt to dislodge the food he was choking on. Well, there was also Kurama's uncontrollable laughter, but only Naruto could hear that. Excuse me?" Raven sputtered. Surely, she'd heard her wrong. "Oh, of course you are excused. I merely stated that the medication was to help with your after-sex soreness. Tell me, was it most pleasurable?" she innocently asked with a peculiar giggle. As Naruto was still suffocating, and none of the others had ever heard it before, Kurama was the only one to recognize the laugh. "By the sage, she is a pervert," he thought as his laughter grew. "That's hilarious." Snapping out of his stupor, Cyborg slid over. "Hold up," Cyborg demanded. You're telling me that our Raven, had sex? Yes. Starfire confirmed before Raven could deny it. Boo. Cyborg asked in a dangerous tone. Normally he wouldn't be so angry, after all Raven could make her own choices. But last night had been very stressful for all of them, and someone had taken advantage of her emotional state to sleep with her. Naruto had finally cleared his throat, and he barely had time to realize the danger he was in before Starfire answered. With friend Naruto, of course. Time seemed to stop for a moment at the declaration before Cyborg yelled, "Naruto," and charged him with his frying pan. Raven was almost like a sister, and his protective instincts easily overrode his friendship with the blonde. During his training trip, Naruto had learned that running just made the eventual beating worse. The best you could do was beg for mercy, even if you were innocent. Jiraiya had framed Naruto for his peeking multiple times. Thus, Naruto raised his arm to protect his face and closed his eyes, resigned to his fate. When several seconds passed with no pain, he looked up to find the pan barely an inch from his face encased with Raven's magic. Enough. But the still furious Cyborg tried to argue. We did not have sex. Raven shouted before lowering Cyborg to the ground. As he calmed down and Naruto wept tears of relief, she rubbed her temples. Can I have the painkillers now? But, if you did not have intercourse, why do you require it? Starfire tilted her head in confusion, but nonetheless handed it over. For my headache. She groaned as she poured herself a cup of tea. Star? Robin asked. Yes, Robin. Why did you think he waved his hand in the air, not wanting to say the words. For once, Starfire understood exactly what he meant. Oh. Because Raven slept in his room. She proclaimed, causing Raven to spit out her tea. As Cyborg grounded on Naruto again, he quickly defended himself. We didn't do anything, I swear. I was just having nightmares and she was helping me. And just how was she helping you? Kurama, who had just begun to calm down, roared with renewed laughter as he caught her innuendo. Once again, he was the only one that noticed. Given Cyborg's current state, Naruto didn't really want to tell him that he'd been snuggling with her all night. Luckily, he didn't have to. Apparently, a toad randomly popping into existence on the kitchen counter was enough to distract them. Yo Naruto. You so owe me. That old hag nearly killed me. As everyone watched in shock, with the exception Raven, Naruto apologized. Sorry about that, Gometon. Just give me some extra candy and we're good. Naruto paused. I'm actually out of candy. Can I just give you some next time? Gometon deadpanned at him. Really? I risk my life for you, and you don't have any candy. Before he could yell some more, Starfire chose to speak. Greetings, Gometon. I am Starfire. Please, will this beverage be acceptable? She held out a bottle of maple syrup with a straw in it. I personally prefer the mustard, but the syrup is very sweet. While she didn't know who the strange creature was, it clearly knew Naruto and spoke his language. He hesitantly took the bottle and took a sip. His eyes widened in surprise. This is amazing. He said with stars in his eyes. While this was going on, the boys could only watch in confusion. Is it just me, or did that frog just talk? Cyborg asked. Well, they knew that Naruto had a way of communicating with his home, he hadn't told them the specific details. As such, they were completely unaware of his summons. No, it's talking alright. Robin replied. Raven considered explaining the situation to them but decided against it. Gometon. Did Tsunade send what I asked for? Yes. The toad said as he nursed his drink. Naruto waited a bit before asking, where is it? Oh, I don't have it. What? Why not? Naruto shouted, a tick mark forming on his ear. Calm down. You'll get it, but Ma wanted to give it to you herself. Said something about making sure you're eating right. Naruto paled. She wants me to summon her. Right now. Yep. Gometon said. Remember to have that sake next time. I'm not risking my life without it. He added and vanishing in a puff of smoke. Naruto turned to the Titans. Okay, guys, if Ma offers you anything to eat, just say no. Before they could ask who Ma was, he bit his thumb and performed the technique. Kuchius no Jutsu. A resounding crack echoed through the room, though the source was obscured by the smoke. It cleared to reveal a cloaked toad standing over Naruto with a rolling pin. Why, he groaned. It's been a month and you still haven't summoned me. You talk to Pa, but all I get are letters. Cyborg stared at her, then at Beast Boy, then back again. Wait, he turned back to Beast Boy. You mean the frog that whacked me really wasn't you? He asked. It took a moment to remember what he was talking about. Ha! I told you. Beast Boy yelled. He then jumped back with a yelp when Cyborg was hit over the head with a clank. I'm a toad, not a frog. Shima yelled. You can understand him? Naruto asked in surprise, his injury somehow miraculously healed. No, but I always know when someone calls me a frog. She shook her rolling pin. "Do I look like a frog to you?" she demanded. "No ma'am." He instantly denied. "That's right," she said before looking around. "Now where is this Raven you talk so much about?" she asked, looking around. "Ah." She walked over to Raven, having recognized her from Naruto's description. "You must be Raven. It's so nice to finally meet you." Naruto prepared to translate, only for Raven to surprise him. "It is an honor, Sage Shima." Raven replied in Elemental. "Oh please, call me Ma. Everyone does," Shima said. "How?" Naruto began to ask. After he'd learned English, he still always heard Raven talk in Elemental. But, when she spoke just then, her words felt slightly different and by Ma's reaction, it was clear that she'd understood her. "What, did you really think the spell only worked one way?" Raven asked rhetorically. Guess not," he said with a smile. "It's so nice that Naruto-chan finally got a girlfriend," Ma said. "Hopefully, you'll be able to keep him in line." "I try." Raven answered, laughing a little with the old sage as Naruto moped slightly. "Girlfriend?" Starfire asked in English. Both Naruto and Raven froze, having forgotten that she could understand them. "Dudes, you're dating." Beast Boy shouted in realization. He gasped, "That's why you slept in his room last night. You were cuddling." He accused, as if cuddling was a great crime. "Oh, like you and Terra never cuddled." Raven quipped before smacking her hands over her mouth. Terra was a sensitive subject, especially for Beast Boy. Fortunately, Beast Boy didn't seem offended. "Yeah. But we never slept together." Ma, totally lost, asked what's the green one yelling about. When Naruto remained silent, rightly fearing her wrath, Starfire answered for him. "Oh, he's just talking about how Naruto slept with Raven." Whack. Shima seemed to emit an aura of pure rage as she advanced towards Naruto, who was currently embedded in the wall. "Boy. You slept with a girl after only one day, nah. I will not let you become like Jiraiya-chan, even if I have to beat the pervert out of you." "No, wait please. It's not like that." His pleas were ignored and this time, Raven was unable to save him. "Sorry, Naruto-chan." Ma apologized too after Raven explained that they had not, in fact, had sex. "It's alright Ma." Naruto replied from the couch, where he was recovering. The other Titan sat on the far side of the other couch, fearing the old toad's wrath. "Still, maybe this will help you feel better," she said as she gave him a scroll. Naruto grinned. "Thanks." Finally, he could get started. And, Lady Tsunade also sent something else. Ma held up a necklace, a green crystal hanging from it. "I wanted to give it to you myself." He took it with a shaking hand, and everyone but Ma and Raven were shocked when they saw tears form in his eyes. "Naruto, is that?" Raven asked. "It's the necklace Bachan gave me. I thought it was destroyed." "And?" "Yes, I know that it was really destroyed, but I wanted to add it. Only the string. The crystal's too tough to break like that," Ma explained. "After she learned you were alive, Tsunade started looking for it. It took a while, but she eventually succeeded." "Kurama?" Naruto asked. "Now that we're working together, it shouldn't bother me. Go ahead and put it on." His hinge had dispelled with a beating, but he didn't really want to use it for this. But he didn't want to struggle with one hand either. He turned to Raven. "Can you help me put it on?" She gave him a kind smile, of course. She took it from his hand and gently placed it around his neck. "It looks good on you," she observed. Naruto was currently sitting completely still in a clearing in the uninhabited areas outside of town, where he'd gone to practice the Fukinjutsu he'd gotten from Ma. In front and to his sides was a deeply shadowed forest, while a large cliff stood behind him, blocking the view of Jump City. He could have practiced in the tower, but there wasn't enough room for him to spam clones. Besides, he didn't want to blow the tower up when he inevitably made a mistake. He hadn't started yet, as he had another reason for being there. "He's not going to show up," Kurama said. "Of course he is." "How do you know that?" "Simple. I'm a threat. I've interfered with his plans multiple times, and I was able to hurt him. He knows he can't risk fighting me with Raven there, so he'll take the first opportunity he can to take me on alone." That was surprisingly well thought out. "But how will he even know where you are?" "There's no way." Kurama suddenly stopped talking. "You were saying?" Naruto thought smugly, having sensed the same thing the fox had. "Shut up, brat." "Hello, Naruto," Slade said as he emerged from the dark edges of the forest. "Finally. I've been waiting here for 20 minutes. Naruto complained. This actually caught Slade off guard, though he didn't show it. "Sorry, I guess I just got lost on the road of life." Naruto just stared at him in disbelief before bursting into laughter. This is the guy Trigun considers a threat. Slade thought in a deadpan as he watched Naruto literally rolling on the ground laughing. Though annoying, his hysteria provided an excellent opportunity. Slade launched a fireball and watched as it engulfed the blonde. Despite his apparent success, his instincts, finely honed from a lifetime of combat, were telling him to remain alert. Only by listening to them was he able to lift an arm to block the incoming kick. Still, the force was enough to send him skidding into the clearing, stopping just shy of the smoldering log where the boy had been. It had also broke his arm, though it quickly mended itself. "Is that it? My friend sneezed hotter ones when he was 12. Naruto taunted from where he'd punted Slade. Without Beast Boy here to worry about, Naruto was able to take full advantage of his Sage mode. He, along with 3 hidden clones scattered throughout the forest, had been gathering natural energy while they waited for Slade to arrive. It had been through his enhanced senses that he'd been able to sense the blast and pull a quick Kawarimi. Usually he wouldn't use it so early, but he wasn't taking any chances with Raven's life on the line. "Don't worry. I'm just getting started," Slade replied as he shot several blasts in rapid succession. "Whoa!" Naruto exclaimed, barely able to dodge by contorting his body around the beams. Slade saw this and aimed a blast near his feet to trip him up. Rather than get caught in the blast, Naruto jumped backwards and planted his feet on a nearby tree. Using his enhanced strength, he leapt into the air with enough force to topple the pine. As he passed overhead, Naruto quickly made a clone which quickly spiraled chakra in its hand. Naruto grabbed the clone's free arm and hurled it towards Slade. "Rasengan!" The clone yelled as it rocketed towards him. He jumped away before a resounding boom rocked the forest. Slade's eye widened in surprise at the utter devastation the combo had wrought. "Most impressive," he commented. The crater was at least 10 feet in diameter. "Still didn't get you though," Naruto noted as he flung several kunai, still mid-air, and went through several hand seals he'd asked Tsunade for. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, causing the 5 he'd thrown to multiply into 50. "Very true," Slade said. While there were numerous, very few were actually close to hitting him. Those, he knocked to the ground. He was about to rush forward, but paused as he heard a hissing sound. Slade looked down and noticed that all the knives had a slip of paper wrapped around the handles before they all exploded. "You know you can't kill him, right?" "Of course. He feels just like an Edo Tensei." "Then why didn't you wait until you're able to seal him before you picked a fight?" "He's just a pawn. Trigun would just find someone else." The dense smoke from the explosion started swirling around before it began glowing. It grew brighter and brighter as flames began to appear. Soon, it had become an inferno centered around an unharmed Slade. "Did you really think that could kill me?" Slade asked as he walked out from the flames. "Of course not. You're already dead." His words caused Slade to momentarily halt his advance. "That's why you're working for Trigun, right? He promised to bring you back to life." "You're a surprisingly accurate deduction. Tell me, do you simply act the fool to confuse your enemies?" "I wish." "Hey." "Nah," Naruto responded out loud. "That was Moribito's thing. I'm as straightforward as you can get." "I see. You know Trigun's going to betray you, right?" Naruto said, switching gears. "Perhaps, but I have a plan for that." "Even if you do come back, what then? There won't be a world left for you." Slade pondered his words before chuckling. "Are you actually trying to persuade me to switch sides?" "I've done it before." "Really?" Slade said in clear disbelief. Behind Naruto, a flaming tendril emerged from the ground. "In that case, I'm going to have to decline." The flaming protrusion rushed to ensnare Naruto, but he sensed it and jumped out of the way. "Raven might be able to help you, you know," he continued as if nothing had happened. "She might be able to free you and bring you back. And you would just let me go?" "Of course." He chuckled again. "I was wrong. You're not a fool. You're simply naive. And in this world, that's almost as bad." Slade charged him, done talking. Naruto sighed. "I'm not as naive as you might think." He dispelled one of his meditating clones before creating 3 new clones around him. One went to engage Slade as the other 2 channeled chakra above his outstretched hand. "I've experienced more than you know," Naruto said as he ducked under a punch. "I've been through war. I've lost friends." He launched a punch at Slade's face. He moved his head to avoid it, but it still somehow made contact. "I've known loneliness. I've known hate." Slade heard as he flew backward. He got to his feet and heard a ringing that was far too loud to be from the impact. Looking for the source, he saw the original Naruto holding a small 4-bladed sphere of energy. "But I will never allow it to change who I am. I am Naruto Uzumaki, and I never give up. I will defeat Trigun, and I will save Raven." In a slightly quieter voice that could still be heard above the ringing, he added, "And I might be able to save you too." With that, he threw the Rasen Shuriken. Slade, too slow to dodge, took the attack full force. While Naruto had made the jutsu smaller than usual to avoid notice and cause a panic, he was still fully enveloped by a sphere of uncountable microscopic blades. After the attack died down, Naruto walked to the steaming body, knowing that he was still alive, and knelt down. "Think about it. You don't want this any more than we do. Slade only stared at him before sinking into the ground. You're too soft, kid. I know, but I had to try. He looked at the sun and saw that he still had plenty of time before Raven expected him back. He looked around the clearing, pleased to see that the fire hadn't spread. Still, he should probably put them out. He made a one-handed seal. Taj Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He cried as over 1,000 clones popped into existence. As 5 went to clean up the area, the others pulled out several scrolls. Clone 512 threw down his scroll in frustration. Gah. Why isn't this working? Didn't you read notes at the end? Clone 626 asked. Unlike most of the others, he wasn't writing. Instead, he was just relaxing against a tree, eating some cup ramen. 512 glared at him. So what if I didn't? At least I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Well, if you had read it, you would know that you can't clone Genjutsu. That means we can't make it with this stuff. Clone 626 waved a blank sheet of paper for emphasis. What? He yelled, getting the attention of several of the equally frustrated surrounding clones. You mean I've been slaving away for nothing? Yep. Why do you think I'm sitting here? Screw this. As Clone 512 dispelled itself, a loud chorus of groans echoed through the clearing. Are you serious? Come on. I could have been eating ramen. Over 3/4 of the clones followed 512's example after receiving its memories. The real Naruto, who had actually begun making some progress on a basic storage scroll, grabbed his head in pain and pitched forward. Idiots. He thought his unconsciousness claimed him and the rest of the clones popped out of existence. Raven withheld a smug chin. Cyborg had played a good game, but it was time to end this. As she moved her queen across the board, she suddenly winced in pain, releasing her piece prematurely. Aha! Cyborg, who had failed to notice her distraction, moved his rook to take advantage of the opening Raven left him. Checkmate. I finally win. He yelled in triumph and jumped to his feet. Go Cyborg. It's your birthday. Go Cyborg. Go Cyborg. While he performed some strange victory dance, Raven closed her eyes. She had easily recognized that a brief stab of pain was not hers and decided to investigate. Raven searched her mind, hoping to find some remnant that she could trace. Instead, she was shocked to find herself inside her mindscape. It shouldn't be possible. Even without Trigon's interference, it usually took several minutes of very deliberate meditation to come here without a mirror. And on top of all of that, she didn't recognize this area. Before her stood 2 lush trees, about 8 feet apart. They curved towards each other before meeting as though in an embrace. They twisted around each other and grew as one, sprouting lush greenery and blooming flowers. The only indication that they were still separate were the differences in the flowers. One had striking blue petals with a beautiful sunset orange center, while sported the same colors, but reversed. She walked forward and placed a hand on a trunk. It felt warm, humming with life. When she strode beneath the arch created by their joining to view it from the other side, the scenery around her changed. The trees were still there, but her mindscape was gone. The sky looked natural instead of her ominous dark. The rocky ground had been replaced with lush fields, which sported several trees that dwarfed the 2 she walked through. Despite their size, they seemed insignificant when compared to the beauty of the gate. That's what it was, Raven realized. They formed a gate between my mind and… Welcome, lunch. A booming voice rang out through the field before a giant mass of orange landed before her, teeth bared. Raven wasn't impressed. Really, Kurama? She asked in a deadpan. Ah, you're no fun. Kurama complained as he pulled back. Normally, the sight of a giant demon fox baring its teeth as it threatened to eat you would be a terrifying sight, but Raven actually liked him. Naruto occasionally let Kurama take over so they could talk. At first, they'd mainly stuck to discussing Trigon, but it had since evolved into a sort of friendship. All 3 of them, Raven, Naruto, and Kurama, had been feared for matters beyond their control. They had been feared and isolated, and in some cases, hated. Kurama, though, had experienced far more than either of them, and Raven was astounded that he'd managed to overcome his hate. When she had heard his story, she'd cried, and her opinion of both of them had risen greatly. So, sure, this was her first time seeing him in the flesh, but she'd recognize his voice anywhere. It's nice to finally see you, Kurama, she said with a smile. Likewise. He stretched like a cat before laying down. What is that? She asked, pointing to the tree gate. How'd I get here? Let's wait until Naruto wakes up. I don't want to have to explain twice. He said lazily. Wakes up. Kurama nodded his large head and brought one of his tails around, depositing Naruto between them. Yeah. Before you freak out, he's fine. Or, he will be. The idiot suffered some brain damage from dispelling so many clones at once. Raven stiffened. Brain damage. She hurried over to Naruto and kneeled beside him. Placing her palms on either side of his face, she tried to heal, momentarily forgetting that this not being his real body. Relax. I told you he'll be fine. He should be up in a few minutes. Raven sighed as lowered her hands. How many did he make? About 1,000. She groaned. Idiot. Ha. I knew there was a reason I liked you. Naruto woke to Raven's laughter with a smile. He may feel like crap, but hearing that beautiful noise more than made up for it. However, her next words made his blood run cold. He actually kissed Sasuke. Twice. I swear to Kami it's true. And let me tell you, that second one there was tongue. This sent them both into another fit of laughter as Naruto leapt to his feet. Ignoring his pounding head, he shouted, "Traitor. You said you'd never tell her that." Kurama sported a shit-eating grin. "Technically, I said I wouldn't tell her while using your body." He gave his body an exaggerated once-over. "Well, would you look at that? This isn't your body." "Oh, you're gonna pay for that fuzzball," he yelled, then blinked at Raven in confusion. Not that I don't love seeing you, but how are you here?" "Somehow, that connects our mindscapes," she said, pointing to the tree gate. Kurama was going to explain, but someone overdid it with their clones. She gave him a stern look. "From now on, don't train with more than 100. But he tried to argue. 100. She said, punctuating each word. "I like your mind too much for you to break it." "Okay," he said in defeat. Cough whipped. Cough. Naruto glared at him, not amused by his poorly concealed jibe. "Anyway, now that you're awake, I'll explain. From what I understand, that is the original link you two formed when you first met. The one that let you understand each other." "I thought you said it wasn't strong enough to do anything like this?" Raven asked in confusion. After spending a month with him, she was confident that nothing short of her anger getting loose would be a real threat to Naruto. Even then, she had her doubts that anger would even want to hurt him. It wasn't. Back then, it barely even let you talk to each other. If it had been left alone, it would have disappeared entirely. But for some reason, the closer you two got, the stronger the link became. Eventually, two saplings sprouted and grew towards each other, though they only met when you got together. "You know, that's kind of romantic," Naruto commented to Raven. "And the flowers bloomed when you slept together." "Now, I was sleeping, but I can only assume they appeared because you took her flower." Kurama finished with a straight face. "That's not what happened and you know it, you perverted fox," Naruto yelled indignantly. Raven only blushed, slightly desensitized from that morning. "Do I? I guess we'll never know." Oh, he was enjoying himself. Kurama made a mental note to thank Starfire if he ever got the chance. Though in all seriousness, this shouldn't have happened. "What do you mean?" Raven asked. "Linking two mindscapes together like this is next to impossible. This isn't some simple mind-reading technique, it's a literal bridge between your minds beyond the confines of space-time. Us bid you have our shared plane, but that's only because we were originally one entity. To develop your small bond into something like this should have taken years, if not decades, of deliberate manipulation. And yet you two did it in a month. On accident." As they stared at him in open shock, he grinned. "Congratulations, Naruto. Even here, you're still the #1 most unpredictable shinobi." "Hey Raven. Ravian. Are you home?" Beast Boy flitted around, poking her at different angles. "Raven." She didn't even flinch when he shouted in her ear. He'd been looking for Naruto so they could practice with Naruto's Sage mode, so naturally he'd gone to Raven. Unfortunately, she seemed dead to the world. Suddenly, he got an idea. A dangerous idea. An idea so horribly risky that you'd have to be clinically insane to even attempt it. So naturally, Beast Boy rushed to get supplies. They sat together by the gate, holding hands in a comfortable silence. It was nice. After everything that had happened over the past few days, it felt good to just relax with Naruto. They were still in his mindscape, though Kurama had wandered off a while ago. She smiled fondly at Naruto. They'd only been together for 2 days, but it felt like a lifetime. "Raven?" Naruto suddenly asked. "Yes. Can we visit your mindscape? You don't have to let me if you don't want to, but I'd like to see it." This threw Raven for a loop. "I told you what it's like. It isn't very pleasant. It isn't beautiful like this place." Naruto frowned and locked her in place with an intense gaze. "Raven, everything about you is beautiful, flaws and all. Your mind is beautiful. It's not sinister or creepy or anything else. It's a part of you, a part that I'd love to see if you let me." Raven felt her heart pounding. If it had been anyone else, she would have believed that they were just words or flattery, an exaggeration to get what they wanted. But this wasn't anyone else, this was Naruto. He always meant what he said, and he would never manipulate someone. It was one of the things she loved most about him, how completely honest he was. Despite how close they'd gotten, there was still some small part of her that believed that this couldn't be real, that one day Naruto would realize that he'd made a mistake and leave her. Her anxieties had only been exasperated by the horrible thought that maybe their feelings weren't real, that they were some sort of side effect from the gate. Thankfully, Kurama had quickly dispelled that notion, saying that it was the other way around. Yet the anxiety still lingered. But here he was, declaring his total acceptance of her. As she stared into Naruto's intense gaze, she felt the last of her worries slip away. "Okay. Beast boy. What is wrong with you?" Cyborg asked in a fierce whisper. He'd come to Ops to get a midday snack only to hear maniacal laughter. And what was the source of this laughter? Why, only a suicidal shapeshifter riding on Raven's face. Oh, did he forget to mention that he'd somehow wrangled her into a frilly pink tutu over her cloak? "Relax." Beast boy said confidently. "She's totally out of it. Look." He grabbed her and, to Cyborg's horror, stuck one of her fingers up her nose. "See." He pulled out his phone and took a selfie with her before removing her finger. "See. She is going to kill you, BB. Literally kill you. Only if she knows about this." He argued smugly. "Oh really? And how are you gonna manage that?" Cyborg asked skeptically. "All I have to do is take off the tutu and wash off the ink before she wakes up." Boom. No evidence. "Beast boy," Cyborg said slowly. "Take a good look at that marker." "Why? It's just an expo marker. It's not like I used," he trailed off as he read the label. Ever so slowly, his smug grin turned to an expression of horror. "Wow." Naruto exclaimed as he looked around. This is amazing." From Raven's description, he had been expecting a desolate wasteland, but to Naruto, it was strangely beautiful. The night sky was littered with blazing stars and what looked to be several solar eclipses. None were super bright on their own, but together they cast a rocky landscape into a beautiful silver light. Several rock formations floated above them, almost protectively. "You really think so?" she asked uncertainly, her face reddening in a cute blush. "I do." He raised his hand to caress her cheek. "Why?" she asked. Raven gazed into his eyes, not wanting to miss a single word. "This place, it doesn't try. It doesn't need to. My mind took a lot of work to get it the way it is now, and even then, with all the color and vegetation, it feels artificial. Here, it feels right. It has the same grace, the same natural beauty you do." In response, Raven forward and claimed his lips. The kiss was gentle, but it conveyed all her love and gratitude in a way she never could with words. After a moment, she pulled back for breath. "I love you," they said at the same time, causing them both to chuckle. "You know, that was only our second kiss," Naruto observed. "Really? It felt like more than that." "Yeah. Should we do something about that?" The look he gave her sent shivers down her spine. "Please." However, before they could do anything, a sudden shout interrupted them. "Naruto." Why, a pink blur tackled him to the ground. "I'm so glad you're here. Oh, this is the best day of my life." Raven growled at the figure straddling her boyfriend. "What do you think you're doing?" Her pink counterpart giggled. "I'm sorry. But I just couldn't stop myself." "I'm guessing you're happy." Naruto managed from under her weight. Seriously, she weighed more than the real Raven. He didn't even know emotions had weight. "Yep." She popped her pee. "Maybe you should remove yourself from his body, seeing as you are currently depriving him of oxygen," a new voice suggested. "Oops. Sorry." Happy apologized as she got up. This allowed Naruto to see 7 more Ravens, each wearing a different cloak. "Thank you, Knowledge." He thanked the bespectacled girl. "That is correct. And you are very welcome." Raven had described each of her emotions to him. Knowledge wore yellow, rude wore orange, bravery green, rudeness orange, sloth brown, anger red, timid gray, and passion. "Yes." The purple-cloaked emotion purred as she sauntered over to Naruto. "Now I can have my turn," she said as she trailed a finger down his arm, causing him to shiver. She leaned over and whispered in his ear. "We're going to have so much fun." "Get off him." Anger yelled as she yanked passion away. "Stop acting like a slut." Naruto went wide-eyed, having never expected to hear Raven's voice say that. "And you." She pointed angrily at Naruto. "Stop." She seemed to struggle for a second. "Being so handsome. It makes it hard to be mad at you." She stomped away, dragging the protesting passion with her. "I never thought I'd be thankful for anger." Raven muttered. "You're telling me?" "I thought she was going to rape me." Naruto shouted. "You don't think I'm attractive?" This came from Timid, who stared at him with teary eyes. Even though she was only an emotion, Naruto could never stand to see any part of Raven cry. "Of course I do," he said as he rushed over and enveloped her in a hug. "You're the most beautiful girl emotion I know." Raven, even though he wasn't technically talking to her, smiled. "So what's the hold up?" Pure prudeness let out. "With those clones of yours, we could have a pretty good time." "That could be dangerous." Knowledge commented as Naruto, Raven, and Timid sported full body blushes. "Bring it on. Danger is my middle name." Bravery challenged. "Yes. And we can join in." Passion added as she rejoined them, somehow having escaped anger. "Absolutely not." said Emotion screeched. As they debated the merits of clone sex, Raven snapped out of her funk. "We're leaving," Raven said. She grabbed Naruto and, leaving timid, walked back through the gate. The Bahamas have such beautiful beaches, but Niagara Falls are so romantic. Or how about Venice? Or maybe Italy, or Fiji, or Rome, or… Shut up, Harley. Or Paris, or… Poison Ivy sighed as Harley Quinn continued fantasizing about vacationing with her precious Mr. J. Usually, Ivy could just tune her out, but she was on edge. For the past month, the Green had been crying out to her, begging her to find someone. It was driving her crazy, but she couldn't because she was stuck in this damn cell. And Harley was still talking. "Hello, Pamela." She turned to face the voice. "Isn't this a surprise? I heard you were dead." Slade emerged from the shadows outside her cell. "And yet here I am." She snorted. "And to just what do I owe the pleasure for your visit? I have a problem, you could say. See, there's this boy that's interfering with my plans, and you're the perfect person to ask for help." She leaned forward, interested. "And why me? We both know you rarely call for help. And even then, you've never come to me." "It's the boy, Naruto. From my understanding, he seems to have quite the connection to nature." At the name, the Green's call increased drastically, causing her to flinch slightly. This did not go unnoticed by Slade. "I assume you're interested. What do you want me to do to him?" she asked, still weary. "I don't care, as long as he's gone." Alarms began blaring in the background. "It seems we've run out of time. So tell me, are you in?" End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.